Hello everyone. Welcome on into the light, where everything in the dark comes to light. I'm your host, Marissa, and we're going to explore some updates today in the David and Celeste case. Um, Law and Crime here has an update exclusive with the private investigator, who's Steve Fisher, who has always provided excellent factual information. So I'm sure it's something that's important to see. It says that he knows who moved the Tesla with the body that was in the trunk. So we're going to look at that. I have not watched this video yet, so I figured I might as well watch it live with everybody and live react to it. We haven't had many updates in the case recently. Besides, we've had David selling off some properties in Texas too. Well, not selling off, transferring properties to his mom's name. He's been who knows where. We don't know. Haven't heard anything. And I'm just thinking, to be honest, that we're probably going to hear sooner than later about some movement in this case. Hopefully some arrests made and stuff like that. With that being said, I always think it's important to give the system the time it needs to make sure they have everything put together, all their facts, all the evidence that they're going to need to bring charges, whatever that is, because we don't know the involvement here, right? When it comes to David specifically, is he involved in some way? Does he know? In my personal opinion, absolutely 100%. There's no doubt about it. We've seen the evidence that he knows who Celeste is. It appears that he was in a relationship with her. And to be honest, I don't think the word relationship is even the most appropriate word. We're talking about a child. Celeste was a child, and his involvement in her life was completely inappropriate. So, regardless to me of anything that comes out of this case, whether it's concealing a body, if he didn't have anything to do with the red rum, he's clearly to me guilty of having an inappropriate relationship with a minor. There's got to be charges that are going to be brought there. And I think when we look at this case, we may not see much coming out at this time. I think we're going to find a ton of evidence. I'm sure the biggest evidence in this case has to do with all the electronics, right? You're talking about two young individuals. And we're talking about a time where people have multiple social medias. They've got phones, they're texting, they're communicating. You think that that's all hidden? I guarantee you so much of this case is going to come out that has to do with electronics. That's going to have to do with video recordings from the neighborhood. Because I'm telling you right now, that area of the neighborhood, everything's being recorded in the Hollywood Hills. Absolutely. Security cameras, movements. We're talking about a Tesla that probably is going to have data of where that's been going, phones, GPS locations. I'm sure friends that were around have inside information and have been talking to detectives. I think when we find out everything, I don't know if we're going to be shocked. I think there's an abundance, though, of information that they are combing through. And I think that's what's taking a while. Just think about it. If anybody has kids that are teenagers, right? Young teenagers, if they have phones, can you imagine going through their phones for the past couple of years? The amount of information on it, looking into social medias, looking into profiles that they might have. And then even when it comes to David, he's had multiple profiles online, social media. He's got backup accounts. It's a lot. That's a lot to comb through. With that being said, though, that means that there's going to be information there, and there's going to be evidence, and evidence that what are you going to, you can't really fight against that, right? So I'm curious to see how that goes. My other curiosity is in talking about Celeste and her situation, whether whatever charges come from that and his inappropriate relationship, I wonder what comes about harboring a child who is known to be missing. And my other curiosity has to do, is there any chance that the federal government has stepped into this, FBI? Because if there's any inkling that David took Celeste across any state lines, right? Traveling, whatever, wouldn't that need to involve the FBI? Thoughts? These are the things popping into my head. If they're coming through information and there's something about that, you'd have to get them involved, right? Um, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I'm sure that we are waiting for good reason and that there's a lot to come. A few insights I have as well. I live out here in Los Angeles. So when this case initially aired, it was on my local news. And when I started seeing some commentary about the situation, and a lot was really focused on the car and if people noticed the car was there and when it was called and reported and such. And honestly, a lot of the whole situation with the car was nothing to me as somebody who lives in Los Angeles. Street parking is common, even if there's a home that has multiple car garages, right? There's apparently three in that home. It would not be abnormal, one, which it seems to be the case, that that garage was used for other purposes, that there's a gym in there. It was used as extra living space. And it appears that there was a red Tesla stored in there in one of the spots. Beyond that, though, before we knew that information, my first thought was it's incredibly common that even if you have a dedicated car space to park in at your home, people will park in the street to sometimes save space for somebody coming to visit them, because trying to park in a neighborhood if someone's coming over can be near impossible, especially if that area, which I'm thinking probably in the Hollywood Hills, is permit parking. I could be incorrect. I haven't been to those streets, but it's common in that area, and across many areas of LA, that there's permit parking only areas in residential neighborhoods. And even I know if somebody comes to visit me, I'll park on the street so that way I can say, sure, hey, just pull into my carport, okay? You can park there. It's easy for my guests to come in and out. It's common. The other thing is for somebody to report a car that's been sitting there after a little while, parking is highly valuable to people who live in Los Angeles. So if you're taking up that street parking spot and that car has not moved, you better bet somebody's going to be calling it in. And it appears to me that the call came in around Labor Day weekend, which was early this year. The other thing about his vehicle is it does have Texas license plates, which are going to stand out. His car did appear incredibly dirty. And mind you, yes, we had not had rain at all for a long time. Most recent rain we just had was this past week. I can't remember the last time we had rain, even prior to this week. So it was pretty dirty. And if you notice something like that, you're going to go, what is this car doing here? You're going to make the call because I want the parking spot back. I'm sure people recognized the car. It seems like it's common that he did park on the street. But if it was left for a long period of time, making the call makes sense, right? Because you might be questioning as well, why is it sitting there? And how it goes in LA was not foreign to me, that you make the call, they'll come out, they'll ticket it, they'll give you a chance to move it. If it's still there, usually within 72 hours, 24 to 72 hours, depends on when they're going to come back, or if there's a weekend there, they're going to come back and they'll tow it, right? So the whole car being out on a street parking and getting towed eventually, that was not a shock to me. I think for me, what I looked at is David actually well aware of how Los Angeles parking works? Like, was he paying attention to that? I don't think so. I think that he was about to go on tour. Now, again, this is just me just putting out some things that are online that I think could have happened, right? It's possible, who knows? I don't know anything. We don't know anything. David's innocent until proven guilty, but these are just some thoughts I have based on what we have seen. Something I think clearly happened. He's about to go on tour. He has something that he's not sure what to do with it. Was it in there prior to him parking his vehicle? I don't know. Where did he move it from? When did Celeste pass away? It's not clear. Was him going on tour the cause for an argument? I think the main thing about Celeste to David is she was a threat to him. He's about to go on a worldwide tour with his new album. He was rising in fame, his success was growing, and she could bring that down single-handedly. She had that power over him, rightfully so. I mean, she is the victim in all of this. She's done nothing. She's a child. This is a child, a 14-year-old child. For somebody in his position, who I have some other things I'd like to say about, I don't think he's the most stable person. That's just my opinion. What do you do? I think in his mind, he did not know what to do. There may have been attempts, and maybe GPS will find out if he's traveled to other areas to think of where he could dispose. But I think he ran out of time, and the thing was, you know what, let me put it here in the front and park it on the street, because I don't know who attended the house, but he might have had cleaners. I'm sure the landlord had gardeners coming. It's very common. Even my apartment complex has people stop by once, twice a week to just clean up the area. A house like that in the Hollywood Hills, I imagine, has somebody coming by, and he probably wouldn't want that vehicle directly in the home. As well as if anything happens for an emergency in the house and the landlord needs to enter, right? You wouldn't want to leave anything there per se. And I think in his mind, he thought, okay, you know what? Let me put this in the front. I'm going to just park it on the street. Being from Texas, again, maybe he's not thinking of how long he's going to be away, that this is going to be a problem and your car can get towed. I don't think he was thinking. And I think his plan is he was going to be back and he would handle it then. I think he just had an impulse figure something out and did not ever think his vehicle would get towed and it would come to this situation. But I don't know who thinks in these things unless they're premeditated. And a few more things I wanted to get into about David is I find it interesting to look at individuals and kind of profile them, right? We're all human beings. We all have reasons that we may make decisions and things that have influenced us. And David has had a very, I would say, abnormal growing up. We've learned that he grew up in a very Pentecostal home. He was only listening to gospel and classical music until about the 6th grade, when he was introduced to some modern music by a friend on the bus. And we hear that he was homeschooled starting in 7th grade. The thing with that is he talked about homeschooling a lot, and that being very hard for him, because he would do his schooling and then he would game. That's what he did, right? That's how he eventually got into creating his own music and such. And something else he talked about is he had met other homeschoolers and they would talk about going to social groups, which is very common, right? You have kind of like homeschool pods. And even if you're doing solo homeschooling at home, you still get the ability to go out and have the social component of spending time with other kids your age, maybe field trips and stuff like that with a small group of people. But you need that social aspect of it because school is so much more than just, math, science, history, and the books. So much more than that. In school is where you learn how to kind of work, especially late middle school and high school years, how you're working socially with others, um, empathy, the situations you go through and you learn. I'm sure if you learn back, a lot of pivotal moments happen during those years. It's a big time for growth. So when he talks about that, he never had those groups to go out in, and he says that there was a lot of isolation for him. Um, and it's just interesting to me that a big vent about his experience was being homeschooled. He didn't have friends. It seems to me like he, even not just socially being withheld, but like his just was not exposed to a lot. His exposure was whatever was in this gaming world and the people he was connecting with there. So in some way, there's a part that I see that is not completely surprised that he connected to Celeste at her age, because maybe there was just, and again, this is not an excuse. This is not saying that it is okay or that it was right. But I think there's something that for him, he socially had not seemed to level up or mature and was maybe connecting with her maturity level because he really didn't grow much in all that time. He's starting to talk to somebody who, that's when he was pulled out of school, right? Do you see where I'm making some connections there? Like, because I try to just, again, I love to try to delve into these things and just try to understand. I have questions. We all have questions, and it makes you wonder. Maybe that was part of the connection. Um, and that leads into a bigger conversation as well about just, I don't know, homeschooling, society, um, social growth, social emotional impact. Uh, you know, there's just a lot of things that are covered in school that you won't always get from a homeschool program. And somebody like David seems to have, I think, missed out on a lot that you need when you're growing up. Because I don't think he necessarily maybe understood the world that he was exposed to once he was put into it. That's my opinion. And once you not only get exposed to a world that you might not understand, right? That you've never been put in. He was thrown into that world as an upcoming, sudden, overnight, this artist that came up out of nowhere. Now, the gaming thing is one thing. He can turn on a camera and do that, right? Again, parasocial relationships from somebody behind a camera to now you're performing, you're interacting with people, you're collaborating. This guy was thrown to the wolves. Again, I am not making excuses for him, but I think it's interesting to see his timeline and look into his background to understand things. And so when we look at Celeste as well, again, we have somebody that was vulnerable to many situations. It seemed that she was having trouble at home with her family. Um, I have a lot of questions there. What was anybody doing to look for her and find her? She was found once and brought back. It was known that she had a boyfriend apparently named David. Like, excuse me, what? And I say that because I am the mother to a 13-year-old daughter. And you better believe that if anything was to ever happen to her, first of all, she's not even allowed to date anybody at this age. I don't care who they are, how nice they are. We're not at that age yet. She's still in middle school. Um, God, if anything, just if your child went missing, wouldn't you constantly be looking, be searching, be posting, be asking for help? And it's just not to come up to your family, but it's just these are the things that I think about. Like, what was going on to find her, to bring her home? What was known? Because at the end of the day, this child was calling out for help in some way, right? She needed help. Things were not okay in her life that she went and went to this predator and got caught up with him. It's just sad. Especially if she was brought home once. The cops apparently were able to bring her home once. Did we not know where she would be again? Like, make it make sense. And the tattoo on the finger? Who signed for that, right? Like, you can't, at that age, you can't just go get a tattoo by yourself. So I want to know where that tattoo was done. What tattoo shop? Who signed for it? Was it a family member? Or do we have a tattoo shop? Did David sign for it? Because he is older and had the ability to grant permission? Is there a form somewhere with his signature allowing her to get that tattoo? The tattoo? Because we just got kids out here getting tattooed and are okay with it. It opens questions. What was going on there? Because unfortunately, this child was failed. She was absolutely failed. And this shouldn't have happened. Sorry. Let's that's just, I have so many thoughts on it. It's tragic. It's absolutely tragic. But let's check out what the new information is here that comes from Law and Crime. So I think I tried looking at like the time. They did a recap on the whole case. That's what it got to for a minute, and I'm trying to just want to start it where we get to hear from Steve Fisher. So I'm gonna mute myself and let's see what the update is.
Drop brand deals. And while all of this is happening, David has been making some major legal and financial moves. He's retained Blair Burke, the powerhouse Hollywood defense attorney who's represented people like Harvey Weinstein. David transferred the deeds to 2 Texas properties to his mother right after one of those houses was apparently swatted, this false reporting of a shooting and a dead body there. But now let's get to it. Okay, let's circle back to that Hollywood Hills rental property, how a private investigator, a PI, even got involved in this case. So according to LA Magazine, police had executed a search warrant on that property back on September 17th. So since David had been renting it for reportedly about $20,000 a month, a home that was owned by a man named Malden Trifonich. And officers reportedly collected electronics, computers. They searched the drains for traces of blood or tissue. At least that's the reporting from TMZ. Can't officially confirm that. But this homeowner had said that after he'd heard almost nothing from the LAPD about what they found, he was frustrated. And that is when he made his move and hired his own PI. He told TMZ and the Daily Mail that his family wanted answers about what might have happened in or around this home, and that he wasn't trying to interfere with the police investigation. He just didn't want to be left in the dark about what connections, if any, his property could have to all this. And TMZ reports that the LAPD has since seized surveillance footage.
Let's just say Good for him. Good on this landlord for doing what he's doing, because not everybody would do that. Um, I think it's admirable. He's going out of his way to see what's going on. I'm sure that this poor guy who had no idea that David wasn't even living there is haunted by what could have been occurring there and what happened with this child in his home. So kudos to him for doing the right thing. I'm impressed that he's gone and hired his own PI, and also to his credit that he's saying he doesn't want to interfere with the investigation with LAPD, but he wants to find out some of his own answers. Absolutely. And I'm curious to see if I'm so curious on the security footage and what his access was, because you see, like, it looks like a ring camera out there, right? Like, what's right outside that door? And he had other cameras up there. I'm just curious what the access was to that. Like I said, that area, tons, tons of cameras, tons of cameras. There's footage, there is. So let's keep going.
From the same home, cameras that could show exactly who entered or exited the property. Now, this homeowner reportedly told the outlet that he hasn't even seen the footage himself out of respect for his tenant's privacy. He also claims the police still haven't given him a copy of the warrant or told him exactly what they took. So the big question now is what exactly happened in or around that home, right? And whether the private investigator hired by this landlord, this property owner, has found anything that could shed light on that timeline. And that is where we're heading next, okay? Just one more thing before we get to him, something that we've learned. LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman spoke out, confirmed the case is still under investigation. No case has been presented to his office yet. We're going to get into that a little bit. But now I want to bring on our special guest. I'm joined by private investigator Steve Fisher, who is hired by David's former landlord. Really appreciate you taking the time here to talk about this. First off, Steve, how were you hired? How were you retained in this matter?
So originally, when the body was originally found, I had another missing persons case going in LA of a female, and we thought that could be that individual. And so I kind of stayed with the case for a little while until she was identified, and we knew it wasn't. And I had, discovered some other things, such as when the car was towed and the photos from it being towed and whatnot. And, the owner had gotten in touch with me of the house, and I shared some things with him, and it just kind of evolved from there. But one thing, I would say is he is the owner of the house. He wasn't David's landlord. David wasn't even on the lease, and the owner never even knew that David was in the house. It was actually Josh Marshall, his manager, who had leased the house.
But to be clear, David was living there, right?
Yes, he was definitely staying there. It just was not known to the owner.
Right. Okay. And by the way, I understand this is, an active investigation. There might be limited what you can share. But what exactly is he?
It's not abnormal to me for, say, in the entertainment industry, okay, for them to sort out housing, right? Sorry, Jesse, I froze the frame on that. But that's not normal. My question, the area that I'm confused on is, why would you not inform, even if you're doing it on behalf of maybe a client or your artist to help secure their housing here, and that could be part of their pay package, right? That you've secured housing for them, since he's from Texas originally. Why would you not let the landlord know who the actual occupants of the home are? Right? I mean, even setting up, if you have assistants or somebody with Interscope or anyone, it would be known to just personally sign for something. I'm just curious on that contract, and it is shocking to me that the landlord did not know who was actually occupying the house. Like, what went wrong there? And just also Interscope, the protocols in that situation, if this was being paid for by them indirectly, which wouldn't surprise me. That's what happens in the industry, okay? But it's just, as somebody that's worked in the entertainment industry and how you process things and payments, it's just what was going on there, and what's the paper trail on that? Let's keep
Looking for in this? What exactly is this property owner? What kind of answers is he looking for?
So where really kind of evolved from was the search warrant was served, I believe, on the 17th or 18th, and it was a forced entry search warrant, meaning that nobody was home at the time, and they did not leave a copy of the warrant or of the return, the inventory list of the items that they took from the house, and it was really kind of born out of that. I was not officially retained at that time, but I helped him try to obtain that. And we told robbery homicide, hey, listen, no warrant was left behind. David was out on tour. Josh Marshall lives out of state, we found out. So the owner had his representative go to the house immediately after he found out about this. And there was no warrant, no return. So he really just wants to understand what of his property could have been taken and what the status of that is. And then also, this is troublesome when you learn something like this. All of a sudden, you're thrown into this, and he feels absolutely horrible for Celeste family. And he's like, if there's anything that involves in and around my house that could help, then I want to discover that. And I'll tell you that there have been things that we've learned and we've turned right over to LAPD, but we think there's significant things that could help.
Do you mean that there might be evidence that a crime was committed at that house?
Not so much a crime, no. And I'll just be honest with you. We don't have any evidence that anything happened to Celeste at that house, but there is definitely evidence that we've collected that helps the timeline. We now have a much better understanding of when that Tesla arrived at that final parking spot. I'll tell you, I do have surveillance from different houses in the neighborhood showing Tesla being moved. So things like that, and I'm not even saying that LAPD didn't have that. I'm sure they did, but we wanted to make sure, and we did some work and on the upresing the footage to find out who was driving the vehicle. And there are some other items that were found at the house that weren't taken during the search warrant. And search warrants are limited, right? They can't just go take everything. It's what the judge, and we don't know how broad that search warrant was because we haven't seen it, and that's what we'd like to see. But there were some things that were not taken into custody of LAPD that we think are significant, and including digital media and some other things that really help nail down timeline and things like that.
And you handed that over to LAPD. There's other.
We have the day that we the things that we've recovered, we've given to LAPD within 24 hours.
Do you know who was driving that car, that Tesla? You don't have to tell me, but do you know the identity?
Yeah, as far as it going to the final, that what we believe is the final parking spot where it was towed from, yes.
And that information's been communicated to law enforcement.
So it's been given to law enforcement. They're not going to tell us if they're confirming if that's a person or not. Robbery, homicide, the way they work is we'll take your information. We're not going to speak on it, so I don't know. But listen, it's very clear that neighborhood is filled with surveillance cameras, and the timelines, once we learn those dates and we can see other things that were happening that were even public on Instagram and whatnot, were going on in those people's lives, it makes a lot of sense.
So let me ask you this.
I mean, Steve is saying so much without saying as much as he needs. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's telling us, but he's also not telling us. But he's telling us. We're all gonna go look back at social media posts around that time, right? And I told you, there's cameras everywhere there. There's cameras everywhere in the hills. It's just. I'm also shocked that I'm curious when he says digital media, what that entails as to what they handed over to LAPD. Like, what I would think any and all digital media would have been part of what they would have been able to take. I mean, who knows? I don't know what the order was, but I mean, eventually we'll know, so let's keep going. Crazy.
This, if you see when the car was parked there, have you seen anything to indicate that Celeste's body was transferred into that car after the car was parked there? Or in other words, do you believe that her body was in that car the minute it was parked in the location it was ultimately towed from?
So I'll say I have no evidence of a body being transferred before or after. There's no evidence of that at all. But I will say, when it was moved to that position, it was already like that. So that car had not been used in a very long time. It was super dirty, caked on dirt. I'll tell you, this was in late July. So it's bizarre because we also got media that the car was used a lot. David even spoke about it in Instagram videos. He took it to a detail shop and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, the very beginning of the year, that car, something happens, and that car's doesn't show up anymore. It's not used. It seems to disappear. And then that red Tesla learned, which we didn't know until the search warrant was served, that there's a red Tesla in the garage, which I can tell you was at least on February 1st.
Okay, that's big information, right? We're looking at timeline. He's saying that it seems like around January we stopped seeing use maybe of the black Tesla, and the red Tesla's leased around February 1st. Was he then using and driving that instead? Was the lease to him? Or I thought it was, again, if somebody knows, please in the comments below. I don't know. I thought that was maybe leased to a manager or something, which again, that wouldn't surprise me if a manager is not living in LA and keeps the car there. I've seen that so many times I can't count, with executives living out of the main city but keeping their car. You need a car in LA, so that wouldn't surprise me. But did he? What? That's wheels are turning here. That's a big piece of information.
Yeah, let me just narrow down here. Do you have the precise date of when that car, the one with the Tesla, with Celeste's body inside, when it was left there? Do you know the specific date of when it was left in Hollywood Hills?
I believe so. I believe it. July, late July, very late July.
So one thing that we've heard, and this is something we've talked about, is the LAPD has seized footage from the rental property, multiple security cameras around the property. There are even reports of a smashed Ring camera on the ground.
Yeah.
And according to TMZ, police seized all the footage from multiple security cameras at the house last month when they executed the search warrant. TMZ described that footage as a, quote, potential gold mine for investigators. And the question becomes, did you see anyone coming into or leaving that property after the Tesla was there? So after the Tesla with Celeste's body inside is there, can you tell us you saw people coming in and out of that property before before the search warrant?
No, not from the time that the Tesla was left. So from the time the Tesla was left there, he literally immediately started the tour. There was a tour bus that was leased, and I'll tell you that Tesla was moved and literally a bus departed for tour.
Okay. You talked about things that might have been taken from the house, things that...
Yeah. What did I just say? Sometimes things are much simpler than they appear. Don't give some people too much credit in what you think they're capable of. They're just not. Just reacting to life and how things are. What did I just say? Steve Fisher, give me a call if you need an assistant. Let's keep going.
You handed over to LAPD. Is there anything you can share with us about what that information may be?
One thing that you just brought up, and I guess what TMZ reported on, the security system. The house has got a very sophisticated security system, not just with cameras, but with sensors and all types of things. It all records to a DVR. And for privacy reasons, the owner, when he leased the house, said, this is the system that's in the house and you can use whatever functions you want on it. That's not something that then the owner could access. So we don't know if the cameras were enabled or not enabled, but if they were, it wouldn't just be cameras. It would be, we'd know anytime anybody came and went from the house, anytime anybody opened a window, everything, if they kept it like it was. But we don't know. LAPD came in and took that whole DVR. They took the entire system, which you would expect. And I've talked to the security company that installed the system, and they've told me, how it was set up. We think it was probably running because there's limited alerts that the security guy can see, which is stuff like if there's a major failure. And there was a low power failure warning that triggered right when they were executing the search warrant. And I think that's when they unplugged the system. So there's reason to believe that the system was running. Whether the cameras were covered or not, I don't know. I can tell you that some of the smoke sensors in the house were covered, and that's probably because maybe I don't know what they were doing in the house. So the cameras might have been covered as well.
During the course of your investigation so far, have you learned more information about Celeste and David, perhaps their connection, anything we should be thinking about that hasn't been publicly reported? Is your investigation also into them as well?
Sure. Yeah. And one of the reasons that we kind of come public with what I'm doing is because I have a little bit different method of working than a lot of private investigators and then what people think is the proper way of doing it. I believe in this digital age, and when, especially the younger generation, when they're on places like Discord and you don't even know their real identities, I put myself out there, and those people do come to me, and a tremendous amount of people have come to me, and I've learned a lot. Now, listen, a lot of it's circumstantial, right? But there are people that are directly in his orbit, and there are people that have photos and videos, and we've gotten a lot of photos and videos from inside the home itself. So you can put people at certain dates and times at the house, and there's a lot of them. It's in the thousands.
Do you know if Celeste was ever at that property?
So, what we recovered, we don't have any of her at that property. We have pictures of her and that were taken by David, we assume, because it's not on a camera phone, but these photos are on a regular camera at different locations. And it really makes me think that it's likely she had another place she was staying. I can tell you that there was a lot of time spent towards downtown LA. And I'll say the last photo that we have of Celeste is January 2nd, 2025.
That is a major update. So, and I think at this point, right, they're trying to pinpoint when was the last time Celeste was seen or heard from or documented, right? What's the proof in the story? January 2nd, 2025 is the last photo he has. Tying back to what he said about the car, right? Seems like something happened maybe in January, leases a new car February 1st. Just kind of lining things up. What did I say? Media, images. And I'll post it in the timeline at a post, but I was going through some images, and I took a screenshot of David in one of his videos on TikTok. It's because I obviously went back through social media to see if you see certain, and there's things I saw that were questionable, right? That make you wonder if it was connected to Celeste and her presence in that home. But you can see on the table, and I highlighted it, there's about 6 cell phones on the coffee table. Now, mind you, if somebody's there, but like the way they're lined up next to each other, there's like 6 cell phones. What are you doing with 6 cell phones? Even if one's for recording, what the heck are you? Whose cell phones are they? Are they all yours? Do they have different purposes? Why is Celeste in downtown LA? Somebody that lives here? I don't go to downtown LA, unless you're going to see a game or something or shows certain areas, but to spend time there, especially a child at her age, is not a safe place, in my opinion. Somebody that's lived here, It's not where I want my child hanging out. It's a lot of information Steve's gotten.
Okay, now that's significant because we were wondering when, she was last seen alive. There was that surveillance footage of her seemingly running away from her neighborhood.
And that was September of 24, I believe. So
yeah,
we didn't have anything. We were like, where was this girl in 2025? But we do have a photo of her on July 2nd, early in the morning, July 2nd, 2025.
Has anyone, and just to be clear, you don't know more information about when she died, right?
No,
okay.
I don't have any information of how she died or when exactly she died. Listen, investigations are always moving. And right now I tend to believe it happened a while ago, a long time ago. And I think January, February, things changed. I mean, you can see it in the photos and everything. And I also think when I first started looking at this case, I'm very much an Occam's razor type of person where I think things are a lot easier than people try to make them sometimes, especially online, into these big things. And I thought this was going to be a tragic overdose, which it very well still could be.
This picture here with the purse, also another screenshot of that being on the couch in the Hollywood Hills home that I noted. So.
And they made a bad decision because they didn't want to expose a potential relationship and put her in this Tesla. And then maybe he thought he could get somebody to get rid of that car. And they were just like, no, I'm not doing it. And just got left there. But I will say this, there are some things that, and I'm talking physical evidence that was at that house that is, there could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her. And it's scary, sadistic stuff. And that's why we're trying to learn more about that. I wish I could say more, but for obvious reasons I can't. But it doesn't have to do with how she died, but maybe how they were planning on ultimately getting rid of her, and how maybe that Tesla was just a holding spot at the time, and things just, their timing was just off as far as getting this done. But there's a few things that were just like, will blow your mind.
Has anyone from David's team, management?
I mean, let that sink in. Also, did I not say that? Also, Kelly has joined the broadcast because obviously she won't sit alone anymore. This is Kelly. She's very clingy, which is fine. Did I not say? But to think what he just stated, and that's terrifying. It sounds dark. Kind of see it on his face too when he talks about it. Wow. My thought too here is just who else is involved, because there's no way he handled this well if he's the one involved, right? I mean, and who else had access to the house? That's a lot. And I'm sorry, it was just left behind? Like, things were just, like, what was the move-out process? Just stuff was just left? Okay, we gotta get off the keyboard, because you're gonna hit, I love you, but you're gonna hit buttons that don't, see? Do you see? This is what happens. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's resume now that we changed the whole screen.
Is that we're just like, will blow your mind.
Has anyone from David's team, management, legal, anybody reached out to you or your client?
I know that my client's been in touch with his manager, but only for the purpose of the lease, because they did ask to terminate the lease. And I believe the other manager that technically was the owner of the red Tesla, I think was in touch with him just because they needed access to the house to get that vehicle and stuff out. Because that's another thing that they could be key in this, is that there's only one key to that house, and who had that and who had access to it and who was in it. Because we also have evidence that while David was on tour at the time between the Tesla being found and the search warrant being served, David was on tour, but somebody was in that house. And there was actually a report report made, not with police, but that homeowner association has a robust private security company, and we've gotten videos from them and reports. And so who had that key is probably the same person that, had access to the Tesla.
Do you know who that person is, and do you believe that is the person that moved the Tesla?
So I definitely know who moved that Tesla on that late July before they went on tour. I can't say who the person, and I don't mean I can't say but I don't know who exactly was in that house, because it's just a report, but there's video, but you can't make a person out. But somebody was in the house, and being that there's only one key, it's like, okay, who had access at that time? So is it the same person that moved the Tesla? Was another last part of the plan about to go in motion as far as getting rid of her body? I don't know.
Now, we heard this week from LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman, and he actually addressed this case directly when a TMZ reporter caught up with him outside the DA's office. And regarding the status of the case, he said, quote, "It is currently under investigation. We don't discuss suspects or the points in a continuing investigation. When and if that case is presented to the DA's office and we make a decision on it, I'll make sure you're one of the first to know. A case has not been presented to our office for filing consideration." And just to underline that, a spokesperson for the DA's office confirmed to Complex that, yeah, no case has been presented for filing consideration. The LAPD also told the outlet that the county medical examiner still hasn't determined a cause or manner of death, saying, quote, "It remains unclear whether there is any criminal culpability beyond the concealment of her body." Now, Steve, you just told us a lot of information here. Are you surprised that we don't have a confirmed suspect from law enforcement or a person of interest or even an arrest at this point? Or can you say, from what you're seeing, that makes sense, but Jesse, maybe be on the lookout for something soon?
Yeah, I would say, Jesse, that makes sense, but maybe be on the lookout for something soon. Yeah, I've seen this in a lot of cases. It tells me, listen, I don't have any inside information on this. I'm just saying, from my opinion, that this means that during the examination, the autopsy examination, there was nothing very obvious, such as a crushed skull, any bullet holes, anything like that. So they're waiting on toxicology to come back to make that final determination. Now, is the medical examiner in contact with the detectives in between this time? Are they? Absolutely. Do they have a preliminary determination? I'm sure they do. I think the DA's office is working side by side with the detectives and telling them, this is what we need for.
And now I'm just curious, because I would think that this is something that is held back. If anything else was found that is more detailed, right, from the autopsy about any cause of death while they await the toxicology report, is that if they saw anything else, I don't think they would release any of that, because we've seen in past cases that that's something the police will hold close to their chest, because if anybody identifies something about it, kind of reveals during interrogations and stuff, it's a key marker, right, of how would you know that was never released to the public, right? Hence why police keep things close to vest. You don't want to mess up the investigation.
For these charges, this is what we would need for these charges. Can you get it or not get it? Listen, a crime 100% happened here. At minimum, it's the concealment of a body, right? So we know somebody did that. Hopefully it's not, a mutilation. Hopefully those initial reports were wrong about her being dismembered. But one thing I have to say, even though I talked about how we found some things that could have meant they had a really twisted plan in place to get rid of her, it never went in motion. So you can't charge somebody for a crime that they may have thought about doing. So, we may never know more about that.
So, Steve, before I let you go, do you have any indication about where David is right now?
I don't. I have no idea. And it's kind of bizarre because his group has stayed so silent, what's left of his group, I guess. And I'm not even sure the conversations that the owner did have with his management in breaking that lease. I'm not even 100% sure his management knows at this time where he's at. I think his attorney might be the only one, and his parents.
Steve Fisher, really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much for providing a little bit more insight into what's going on right now.
Thanks for having me on.
And that is all we have for you right now here on.
I mean, shout out to Steve Fisher, because that's the biggest update we had in a little bit here in this case. That's huge. If we're trying to look at timelines and stuff. And I think that Steve also said a lot without saying a lot in some of those questions. Yeah, it was a lot. I think we will see some more information on this sooner than later. Fascinating update from Steve, and good for him and the landlord who brought him in to work on this and try to look for some more answers and get some justice here. It's good because, as we heard, Steve found more things that he handed over to law enforcement, right? It's just, it's crazy. I'm sorry again, like I said, going back to profiling David, it's, when you look at his music and where he came from and these different identities, this, I think there's a lot more to this individual that he's clearly sick in the mind. I think anybody that could harm anyone or prey on anybody is sick in the mind, right? Something's not right there. But some of the information Steve brought forward is just, you went from gospel and classical music and church to this. What's wrong with people? All right, I think that's all we have for this one. And we'll go live if we have any more updates coming in. If you can do a favor, please like, subscribe, hype it up. I am new to this, and we need the likes, right? So that we can get this channel going. It'd be greatly appreciated. And just know that, again, we are going to be bringing things from the dark into the light. And I've always believed everything that happens in the dark does come to light. Always. So with that being said, obviously we covered a lot of intense topics here. It's pretty heavy. So let's all take a deep breath together. Ready? We're going to breathe in. And we're going to breathe out a little bit. Let it go. Even the cat got up for it. So, without further ado, thank you. Appreciate you tuning in. Until the next time, we're going to do some more videos. We've got some more about the Melody Buzzard and Ashley Buzzard coming up, and the Jake Caro updates. So, thank you for watching In the Light. I'm Marissa, and please let me know your thoughts below. What are the questions you have that are still unanswered? What do you think questions are that we should be asking? Do you find anything that Steve said to be absolutely critical in this investigation that you think is going to change things? When do you think we're going to see an arrest made here? Right? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you.